Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and we're well into day 3 of the 5th Annual Global Education Conference. We're so excited to have Paul Salopek and Liz Dawes Duraisingh here. Paul is coming in through a satellite phone through Liz's microphone. Welcome, Paul.
Liz, are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear?
We hear Paul. Liz?
I can hear your voice, but I can't hear Steve. It's unlikely that I'll hear any questions.
All right. All right.
We'll have to pass them through.
Okay. All right. We're getting rid of the headset.
Okay, good. Thanks to our sponsors and supporters, Iron USA, Global Campaign for Education, and many others. We really appreciate the broadening base of support for this wonderful event. Thank you so much to all of those who are part of those supporting organizations. Those of you who are participating live, it's your chance to indicate where you are located. Click on the star to the left of the map. It's the second icon down, and then click on the map. Put a note in the chat. Oh, look at that fun map light up. Do tell us in the chat a little bit more specifically where you are, time and temperature, and the like. I'm going to quickly move on here. Keep those notes going in the chat. Paul Salopek is a 2-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. In 2013, he set off on a 7-year walk from the Rift Valley of Ethiopia, seeking to retrace the migratory pathways of our ancient human ancestors. Through his Out of Eden walk, Paul uses our deep past as a sounding board for interpreting contemporary issues and assessing where we have come in our unfolding human story. And Liz Dawes, Liz, you're going to have to say your last name for me, Duraisingh, is a principal investigator at Project Zero, a research organization based at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she co-directs the Out of Eden Learn project, this same innovative online learning space to accompany journalist Paul Salopek's 7-year walk around the world. So welcome, Liz. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that we are going to be rather flexible in this presentation. Paul is joining us by very expensive satellite phone from northeastern Turkey, and so we really want to maximize the time that he has with us. So I think we're going to jump right into Paul asking you about where you're at now and how the journey's going, if you could fill in some context for us.
Yeah, absolutely, Liz. Thank you. And I hope everyone can hear me clearly enough. I am calling from a farmhouse in chilly northeastern Turkey, very close to the Georgian border, where I've been walking lately, moving north through Anatolia, which is the eastern landmass, peninsula, the Asian peninsula of Turkey, towards the Caucasus for the last several months. I have been walking through Turkey for the last 4 months, starting in the Mediterranean from a port called Mesine, and going from those balmy climates now, we've moved into very, very cold, high altitude, snow-covered mountains, occasional storms. This is wolf country, and basically small villages where people subsist hunting cattle.
Great. And Paul, you can't see it, but I just want to give a bit of background for people who are watching who don't know about your walk, and I'm jumping slides. Paul does currently have a feature article out in this month's National Geographic called Blessed, Cursed, Claimed, which is about the time he spent in the Middle East. And people are seeing on their screens the front cover story, your first story, where you kind of talk about leaving Ethiopia and the kind of rationale behind your walk. Do you want to just say a little bit about what's motivating you to take this epic walk around the world and what you're hoping to achieve?
No, absolutely, Liz. I think my career, my lifelong career as a storyteller as a mainstream journalist and newspaperman. And I felt that after 15 years of covering stories in bits and pieces very quickly using airplanes and cars and helicopters and fast, speed is essential in the journalism business these days. I decided that we were losing some audience, and not only that, we were losing some meaning from the information that we all absorb every day. I don't think there's a shortage of information in today's age. I think this is the information age. There's a tidal wave of information out there, which none of us can keep up with it. Not even those of us who generate it. But what we're missing, what we're lacking is meaning. And so I came up with this idea to slow down, do what I call slow journalism, and get out of all those mechanical conveyances and then retrace the pathways of the human species out of Africa from our birthplace in the Rift Valley of East Africa to what scientists tell us is the last horizon that our ancestors arrived at 7,000 years ago when they ran out of continents to roll about in, and that is the very tippity tip of South America, Canada, in Chile. So my route will be going out of Africa through the Levant, through the Middle East, into Central Asia, and through China, across a chunk of Siberia. And then I'll be obliged to take a ship because there's no longer land bridge to the Americas as there was about 14,000 years ago, and walk down the western seaboard of the American continent. This is a 7-year journey on foot. It's a storytelling project. It's not an athletic feat. It's not an endurance test. It's not about setting any records. It's about extending people's attention spans, and that's both adults and younger learners. It's about getting people to read seriously. It's about getting people to engage with the world that we live in through thoughtful storytelling at the ground level among the ordinary people who inhabit today's headlines. It's also about using deep history as a mirror and a sounding board for current events. The topics range from environmental stories to culture, from politics to economics, from war to technology, basically everything in the human experiences game, because this is the journey that made us who we are today. So an ambitious project, but one that has an increasingly important educational mission. And I can give an example very quickly of sort of what I'm reporting on right now, and that is walking through the largest forced migration in the Middle East since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Since leaving Israel and taking a ship to Cyprus and then another ship to Turkey, I've been moving into refugees from the country of Syria continuously. And when you add refugees displaced by conflict in Iraq, you've got more than 5 million people floating around this part of the world. And it is an enormous story, one of the most important stories of our day, one that will be having repercussions for our grandchildren. This is what the walk does. It engages with the major stories of our time at foot level, seeing eye to eye, literally, with the people who are making the news.
Paul, can I pause you for 1 minute? Because so people have been looking at the wonderful map that Jeff Blossom from the Harvard Center for Geographic Analysis created. That for those who are looking at it, the yellow route is Paul's very rough kind of route that he's going to take, and the pink shows the broad migratory pathways of our ancient human ancestors. So Paul is in fact going to be leaving out Europe and Australia at this point. But I want Paul to flick to a slide which showcases the milestones that you're creating on the Out of Eden Walk website. And maybe you could say a little bit about how you're documenting the walk in that way.
Yeah, Liz, apart from the weekly storytelling, the weekly dispatches that I'm filing from the trail, I'm also reporting the world as I see it in a very systematic way. This is a very cool way to document the world that we live in, one that I think resonates with learners as well. That is every 100 miles, which is of course 160 kilometers, I've decided to stop and very precisely using a GPS device that geolocates my position continuously stop and take a series of recordings of that specific point of the trail, that specific point on the face of the earth. And these recordings include a panoramic photo, a picture of the sky, a picture of the ground, video, audio. It's basically a sensory snapshot of what life looks like at that point in the world. And it could be slums, it could be empty city streets, it could be empty deserts. And at the end of the walk, there'll be almost 300 of these that will be strung together like little beads, little narrative beads, spaced across the face of the earth. And it'll be like a cross-section, if you will, of what the surface of the earth looked like along the pathways of our ancestors at the turn of the millennium.
Great. Now, I'm going to, for people who are seeing the slides, Paul is also being really creative in terms of creating narrative maps, which are kind of in-depth snapshots of places that he's walked through and embedded photography, videography, and other mediums into that. So I invite you to explore those. But Paul, as your time is precious, I'd like to move to some questions that young people who are taking part in Out of Eden Learn have got for you. I've got some on a slide here, and which I'll read out to you because I know you can't see it. And then we've got some that have come in that we didn't collate in time. And I'm very excited to say that I know that some of the students and teachers who were sent in these questions are actually listening live to this session, so that's really cool. And we invite people to send in questions if they want, but we'll see how far we can get. So I'm going to start with a question that's come from a participating class in Erbil in Iraq, and they ask, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned so far, and what do you want the world to learn?
Well, that's a big question. I would say off the top of my head, one is it's just how normal this seems. You walk on that, interacting on foot at 3 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour. A lot of students I talk to
Paul, we're suddenly losing audio. I don't know if you can adjust your position or something.
Okay, is this any better?
Oh, much better. Yeah, much better. Great.
Okay, I was just basically saying, I guess the biggest lesson is just how normal and natural it feels to be moving across, at the pace of a walk. I think it taps deeply into a part of our humanity that we've largely forgotten as we become a modernized society. And it also awakens the senses. And I think it's just a great way to absorb information and interpret the world.
Great. Well, I know we could go on at length, but I want to get through a number of questions. And so this is one that's not on people's screens, but comes from Alex Z, who is one of Scott Tufiash's students who I think are watching. And this student asks, you've visited many small villages throughout various countries now. Which village was the most welcoming to you, and which village was the least welcoming? Did you know why you were welcome or not?
Yeah, I must say that, I guess that's another hard one to answer because there's been so many examples of welcoming and far less examples that's easier to answer which ones have been less so. But let's just make it easy. I would say that, villages in Ethiopia where people have almost nothing. They have a gourd filled with water. They might have an animal skin. They might have a handful of food. They will share that with you. They'll share half of nothing with you. So those villages were astounding in their hospitality. And also, it's got from the other flip side of the coin, I've been walking through conflict zones, both in the Middle East and in Palestinian territories, and also here in eastern Turkey. And I think some villages have, in fact, turned me away, me and my walking partners, because of the conflict. Conflict traumatizes people. It erodes trust. It makes people suspicious, and with good reason, right? So I don't hold it against them. But we have been turned away to a few villages, and I attribute that to kind of the legacy of war.
Great. And I know for adults who are watching, I think there was a recent dispatch you wrote where you did actually have to break the walk momentarily and just kind of get moving out of the village in Turkey. Here's a question from Rob Martin's 6th graders at the American International School in Chennai, India. How many other people walk with you, and what is their role? For example, translating.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't want to give the illusion that this is a solo walk. It's not. In fact, it's the opposite. The whole idea is to walk with people from the societies and cultures that I'm visiting, that I'm walking through, because they've become not just my guides and translators, they become the windows into the local cultures that I'm trying to learn about. And they, in fact, become my teachers and allow me to try to share their lessons with school children around the world. So it's very important for me to walk with people. And so my walk has been mostly accompanied by 1 or 2 or maximum 3 people, mostly men at this point, but a few women. And there's only one stretch that I walked alone, and that was through Cyprus. I'm looking forward to continuing this trend of getting to know local people and letting them teach me about the place we call home.
All right, I'm going to give you one serious question and one light-hearted question, and then I think we'll have to wrap up this part. So a serious question from this is from Tabitha O'Donnell, students in Florida. What would you do if you saw a homeless child on your walk?
I have. In fact, I've seen many thousands of them. Actually, when I come to think of it, I've probably seen tens of thousands of them. That's if you count refugees who have been displaced from their homes from violence. I do the thing that I hope I do well, which is I try to tell their stories. That's, I think, the only way that I can contribute meaningfully to the alleviation of suffering. You can give people money, you can help introduce them to the game groups, what have you. That's all good and fine. And on occasion I've done that as well. But I think the place where I can try to contribute the most is by sharing the story of their lives with other people, including children around the world.
Thank you. And then we'll just have a more light-hearted one. A student from the same class asked, if I had to walk that long, I would start singing songs. Do you sing while you're walking?
Very badly. I do. And that's the beauty of being outdoors is that, if your singing voice is not that great, your walking partners, including your mule or your camels, can distance themselves from you. They can lag behind or charge ahead. Yeah, there's a lot of singing that has been all the way from Ethiopia, actually, and in many languages.
Great. I'm keeping half an eye on the chat, and Shay has answered the question. People are wondering where we got these questions from. Some we just have come up naturally in our learning community, and we did put out a request to people who are participating, if anybody had questions, to send them forward. Paul, are there any parting words you'd like to say before I segue into chatting with one of our teachers about what we're doing in Out of Eden Learn?
I think just in conclusion, Liz, I'd like to emphasize one of the great joys of working with Out of Eden Learn. And it's not just because learners are following the walk and reading the stories or watching the videos of my walk. They're actually taking this idea and making it their own, no matter where they live, whether it's in India, whether it's in North America, whether it's in Europe. They are taking their own walks and they are using sort of the principles of walking and learning and applying it to their own lives. And that gives me a huge amount of energy. It gives me a great heart and a great morale boost to see learners out walking through their neighborhoods and talking to people in a thoughtful way. And it's great fun to review their work as well. So that would be, leading with that on this July night of the Caucasus Mountains.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, and that will be a great transition as I kind of try and share with people what it is we're trying to do in this companion website. And I think I can speak for everybody who's listening now and who will watch the video later that we really wish you all the best. I know this is kind of like a very cold part of your walk, and we urge you to stay safe and carry on the fabulous work that you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Liz, and thank you to all the teachers who are listening in. Hopefully we can continue the journey together.
Yeah, you're getting lots of greetings on the chat here, people wishing you safe travels and expressing their appreciation, so thank you. Okay.
Thank you all. We'll be talking.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So for people who are listening, I just switched. We were getting Paul on his satellite phone then via my cell phone, which I've now switched off. And for those who are just joining, the slides aren't necessarily in order because we've had to adapt, given that the weather conditions were too bad in northeast Turkey for Paul to join us online. So with that said, I'm just going to go through my slides to get to where we are at. We did have the idea that Paul might read from one of his dispatches, but in fact I think it was a better use of our time just to be able to ask him questions. But the slides are going to be available, and I'll just point out that through Out of Eden Learn, we have a small but growing number of annotated dispatches. Paul's journalism for National Geographic is really written for an adult audience, and we're just trying to make his beautiful writing accessible to a younger audience. I know a lot of our participating teachers do that anyway. And here are some photographs from the dispatch we were going to look at. This is from a much sunnier and warmer piece of Paul's trip, and was about how he was walking in the Afar Desert and came across a cell phone charging station, which pastoralists from miles around would come to charge up their cell phones in a kind of, I guess, a way that in the past you might have associated an oasis with water. And here's a photograph that illustrates kind of the old and the new, a pastoralist there with a cell phone in his hand. And here are some of the kinds of questions that we've been seeing on Out of Eden Learn, students kind of engaging with Paul's writing and kind of generating questions that they have about the world. Okay. So I'm going to segue now to really trying to share with you what it is we're trying to do with the educational component to Paul's epic walk. And at this point, I want to thank and welcome Kim Zimmer, who is one of our participating teachers from Out of Eden Learn, who stepped into the breach yesterday when we realized that Paul would not be able to join us via internet. And so we've modified our session so that Kim and I can really talk about what it is that students are doing on Out of Eden Learn, including her own students. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Liz. I'm here. Great,
great. So I think I will go through and kind of explain to everybody how this works, and then I'm really going to invite Kim to give you a bit of a sense about what this looks like on the ground. So what you see here in the slide is a snapshot of the lovely website that we had custom built last fall, so the fall of 2013. As Steve mentioned in the introduction, I'm based at Project Zero, which is a research group at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And it's been our absolute pleasure to collaborate with Paul on this project. And I also want to give a shout out to the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting. I see that Homer is watching, and she's somebody who's helped to develop some standalone classroom materials to go with Paul's walk. And there are links available to that on our Out of Eden Learn website. What we're doing in our project is building a very dynamic community that invites young people not just to learn about Paul's walk, but to learn from one another. And what happens is teachers or parents from around the world, they sign up on our website, they create an account and a class, and then we cluster similar age classrooms from around the world together into small learning groups, which we call walking parties, and then those groups of students undergo what we call a learning journey together. We automatically send out our curriculum, and they receive new activities, or what we call footsteps, every 2 weeks. What I'm showing you now is inside what I call a walking party. The map is what an individual student would see when they logged into their personal space. And the one we've got here, there are a number here in the US and Canada, and I'm not quite sure where that is because my geography is a bit dodgy there. But every different map will look a bit different according to the group of students that have been put together. Down at the bottom left, you'll see here there are a couple of footsteps, and if I were to click on those, which I will do here, actually I'm going to skip ahead. Yeah, if I were to click on that, you would kind of get detailed instructions about what to do that week. I'm going to go back. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a direct link to Paul's writing. We do have annotated versions in our instructions. And then down below would be the latest posts from people who have been posting their work for that week. So it's a very interactive site that looks rather akin to kind of social media and allows young people to complete activities in the company of other young people. I'll also add at this point that very, very importantly, we're trying to put diverse groups of students together. And our reasoning for this is that the internet provides us with amazing opportunities to connect with other people. But research suggests that people tend to find people who are very similar to themselves on the internet. And we're trying to break that up by putting kids from different living contexts, rural, urban, different geographies, different parts of the world, and also different socioeconomic stations in life, so that they can really start to appreciate and learn from different people's perspectives. Now, the current learning journey that we're offering this fall on Out of Eden Learn is an adapted version of what we were using last year. We listened to teacher and student feedback, and what we've done this fall is to streamline our learning journey into what we call Part 1. It's standalone, so you could just take this one journey and have a coherent learning experience. But you could also then sign up for Part 2, which pulls up on some other themes related to Paul's walk. And the learning journey we're offering this fall involves young people, as Paul says, going on journeys of their own at the local level. They create neighborhood maps, they take walks, share photographs, interview somebody in their community. We have a new footstep where they document the everyday, just as Paul does in his dispatches. So in this way, Out of Eden Learn is not so much about young people learning what Paul is doing, they're learning to do the kinds of things that Paul does. And we've been hearing from educators and students that this makes for a really powerful learning experience. So I'd just like to kind of focus in a bit on what we're trying to achieve. And we've refined these learning goals through experimentation and engaging with our participants. But one of the key things we're trying to do, taking a leaf out of Paul's book, is to invite young people to slow down, to really look carefully at the world around them, and to really listen attentively and respectfully to other people. Now, going into this, I have to admit that I was a bit unsure as to how receptive young people today would be around this learning goal, because everything's so fast-paced and exciting, etc., for many of them. I've been really touched by how responsive young people participating in Out of Eden Learn have been to this learning goal. And I would go so far as to say that we're really tapping into a profound need among young people today to kind of take a step back from the busyness of tweeting and Snapchatting and kind of a deluge of information and activities, to really stop and look at what is going on around them. And for many of our participants, this is something that's quite novel. The second thing that we're inviting young people to do is to exchange stories. And I think you heard from Paul that he first and foremost defines himself as a storyteller and writer, and really sees it as vitally important to share stories of people whose stories might otherwise not be told. And I really feel that Out of Eden Learn offers a unique opportunity for young people to share stories about things that are important to them, to their lives, to their communities, and to do this in the company of other young people. And then this final piece, where we're asking young people to reflect on how their own lives connect to bigger human stories. This in many ways arises naturally, we find. Young people are exposed to people's lives that are very different to their own. They naturally start looking at what is similar or different to their own experience. They start trying to situate their own lives within a bigger geographic context. And then with the history element to Paul's walk, and which isn't highlighted so much in our current learning journey, we're really inviting them to reflect on how does their individual life fit into a much, much bigger, ongoing story of our human species, and to think about the meaningfulness of their lives in a much bigger context. And again, we found young people to be incredibly receptive to what we're trying to do. I'm not going to dwell on the next slide. It's there for people to refer to, but those are some specific learning goals. But I'd like to kind of jump a bit more to look at some actual student work. While I'm kind of moving forward, Kim, would you like to jump in and talk about how anything that I've said maybe resonates with your experience as an educator participating in.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, Liz, you talk about it so eloquently, and I think one of the most interesting aspects of this journey for us has been that slowing down aspect and encouraging students to sort of observe the world around them. And I saw that happen at my previous school in Illinois when we did this program with, I did this program with my fourth graders. It's so very different from then coming to my new school here in Colorado and doing this with middle school students, and how they sort of perceive the world differently and sort of where they are in relation to like using social media and the busyness of their lives. And you know, one of the great ironies of my seventh graders was, you know, us talking about slowing down and observing and taking walks and really just absorbing all the beauty of Vail, Colorado, which is where these kids go to school. And I think they, you know, at that age, at the seventh grade age, it's often you sort of just take it for granted. This is your daily routine. You might drive 35 minutes to school, but you're driving through a mountain range. And I had tried so hard to get the students to really do that, and half of them did. And then the great irony of a couple of weeks ago was kids saying they didn't have time to do the assignment. And so coming in without that, you know, the picture that I wanted them to take from their walk. So I'm still working on that. I'm working on the idea of slowing down. I think it's so important for this generation to really, you know, remove themselves from the things you discussed, which is, you know, the Snapchat and the Twitter and having their face in a computer screen all the time. And the other irony is that I am the technology teacher, and here I am telling them to do this. But, you know, that's one thing that I value in my life. So I'm trying to sort of, you know, encourage them to you know, kind of mimic what Paul is doing and see what happens when they do that. So a lot of reflecting happening. I'm also using this tool as sort of a digital citizenship, digital literacy tool in my classroom because I don't teach a core curriculum subject. I sort of had to tweak it. So the thing I love about Out of Eat and Learn is really the ability to kind of take it and then sort of adapt it to any curricular area. It's a great fit no matter what you're teaching. And so that's what I've really enjoyed about it, and I hope to get more of our teachers involved. Also that element of cultural sensitivity. You know, my students are communicating with students in New Delhi, India, and that's kind of incredible. And they just learned about Diwali last week, and they didn't learn about Diwali from me. They learned about Diwali from the students in New Delhi. And you can sort of see the two conversations that were happening in this slide where the student just posted a really great description of what Diwali is. And I surveyed my 7th graders. They had never heard of that holiday before. Many of them hadn't. We actually have very few Indian students at our school, so that's just a culture that they're not exposed to. And so they read this, and I kind of pointed them to a few of these Diwali posts because it had just happened in India. And you could sort of see the two responses. The students are encouraging them, you know, each other, saying, I love this photo. So those were the students from New Jersey who are also in our walking group. And I just love how the student from New Jersey said the contrast between the light in your photo and the nighttime setting is great, love it. And then one of our students saying, you know, the festival sounds like it's really fun. It sounds similar to the 4th of July. So making those connections that, you know, despite being so far away, truly we all celebrate in similar ways. And so yeah, just so many different learning opportunities through this program and so many teachable moments. And I love that a school in India is part of it because I've been to India and I love India so much. And so I've been able to sort of share some of my experiences. I showed them a slideshow of my trip last week as well. So, you know, this whole idea of diversity and really flattening the world, this is just such a perfect tool for that.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to back up a little bit here because we picked out some student work. I mean, we have an incredibly rich range of student work to draw from. One thing I didn't mention is the ages of the students involved. So what I've got up here on the screen is a hand-drawn map by a 5th grade student from Natalie Belly's class in Marblehead, Massachusetts. And we would typically try and put 4th, 5th graders, maybe 6th graders together. Kim's students this year are 7th graders, so we would group them with like-age students. And we also have high schoolers. And from 4th grade upwards, young people have their own accounts on Out of Eat and Learn, under the kind of supervision from their teacher, and they post for themselves. I'll also add that these accounts are not the young people's real names, and they are not allowed to post pictures of themselves or to reveal private information. So we have an interesting dynamic there. Those rules are so that we can conduct research here at Harvard, but they also serve as a way to take the kids' attention off representing themselves, taking selfies, making themselves look good, you know, pictures of their friends, and turn their attention outwards. So we kind of see it in a positive way, even though it's a way for us to try and keep this space safe, and also so that we as researchers kind of aren't kind of exposed to information that we shouldn't. So I just wanted to point that out. We also have many early years teachers and younger students participating. That was not initially our intention going in, but we had an overwhelmingly positive response from educators of younger children. And what happens there is that we group those classrooms together, and it's the teachers who communicate with one another and who share their students' work. And I can tell you that there's some beautiful stuff happening with even preschool-age children, where the teachers are just doing a terrific job of getting their young people to slow down, to look around them, and to really notice the world. And actually, it's some of our younger students who are particularly gifted at doing that. So I've kind of let your eyes linger a bit on this map. that I picked it of a young student there in Marblehead had drawn. And I wanted now to show you a bit about how that map kind of got used in this particular walking party. So this particular young person received a lot of comments from other people, and then she's written back to respond. And in our prompt, we had asked people to draw a map of their neighborhood as they see it through their eyes, and then to kind of share a story to do with it. And we can see here that she says, the area I live in was never a summer camp. There were just people living in the summer. That's because she described this place as the houses being originally for that purpose. Bravo 16, so that's the username of another child. The houses are not log cabins. I don't know if they used to be, but right now they are houses made out of northern Canadian cedar shingles, or at least most of them. NSHF Village. When I tried to ride my scooter down the big hill, I was, believe it or not, 8. I had never ridden down or rode down a hill before. She's alluding there to a story she told about how the area is all flat, but when she first got her scooter, she tried to ride down the big hill that's shown there on the left-hand side of the map, and it had kind of ended in disaster. She asks 2 other people, you asked, I was wondering how old your dog is. He is 7 months old, soon to be 8 months old. And that relates to a bunch of questions she received about her dog, given that her map was about where she walks it. And then she says to another student, I started walking my dog when I was 10 because that's when I got him. I started walking the loop when I was 8. The houses used to be summer houses, not a camp. So I just picked this to show that we get young people to slow down, to think in new ways about where they live, but crucially they put their work up for other young people to see, and then a dialogue can ensue in which young people kind of share experiences and ask one another questions. And we saw that with the example in Kim's classroom, where the students from India and her own students in Vail kind of started talking about Diwali because that was the photograph that that student shared. Here's a beautiful map that a student from Shanghai posted recently. And here we have an example of how a student from Hebron in Connecticut took a phrase from the description that went with the map, which is something we encourage. We call this snipping, to ask, what are phoenix trees? And Linda from Shanghai replies, phoenix trees, it's a common green plant, general spring blossom, and its fruits are like round balls. In autumn, the brown fruits fall on the ground. And I will say that we have a lot of English language learners in our community, and we are not finding that a barrier whatsoever to young people connecting and really taking interest and excitement and joy in finding out about one another's lives. Here on this screen is something that we're piloting this year, and I want to give a shout out to my colleague Carrie James, who helps to run this project alongside Shari Tishman. We're calling this the Dialogue Toolkit, and what we found last year is that young people were extremely excited to have had this engagement with one another in Out of Eden Learn, but the kind of dialogue we were seeing online looked a little bit thin. And so what we're trying to do is give young people some tools for thinking about how they might formulate a thoughtful response. On that previous slide, you saw snipping represented by the scissors, whereby they might take a phrase from the post and then maybe unpack it or comment on it to kind of get a conversation going. And Chris Sloan, one of our teachers based in Utah, kind of introduced us to that concept. We also use some Project Zero thinking routines, ask young people to make connections, to, as in the case here, appreciate by sharing what they liked or valued in the post, beyond the wonderful, fabulous like it that you might more typically get in Facebook, for example. And Kim, I wondered if the two of us could maybe look at another example of student work here. This is by a high school student based in Oregon, I believe. And he's taken a couple of beautiful photographs here on a walk. I want to share you now what he had to say. I'll just give everybody who's watching a moment to read that. And Kim, if you could read it as well, and maybe, I don't know, share a response or what this made you think of.
Oh. I like that he talks about, during the walk I got to experience and make new friends. So it was more than just observing the things around him. It was the experience of actually taking the walk. And a lot of the students, I've found don't include that. So I think this, student was really observant of the experience. And this goes back to exactly what Paul is doing.
Yes, I noticed that as well. I was also kind of quite touched by the examples that he gave, things that he probably noticed that he would not have otherwise noticed. And I would say that I've been struck by how much nature features in a lot of our students' photographs. Not uniquely so, but something like the blades of grass breaking through the cracks in the asphalt, or young people taking pictures of what they consider to be beautiful, and then saying, I never noticed how beautiful my neighborhood is, or I never have time to stop and appreciate what I see around me. So that, I would say, I've noticed is something that's come up quite a bit.
I've done this exercise with both leading students on this walk, and it was easier to do in my last job where we had a neighborhood to walk around, and all of the students went to school, at the neighborhood school, so it kind of made sense. So I sent out parent permission slips, and we actually went on the walk together. And that was a great experience for me to see their reactions to where they live. And this time around, I had the students go and do this sort of for a homework assignment, and they had a little bit more trouble articulating these types of things. So I wonder, as a group activity, if you do go to a neighborhood school, if there is something to be said about kind of guiding students on this walk, especially if they're younger. And sort of, I remember I was prompting them, look closely, stop, let's stop. And we stopped about 6 times on our walk, and, which is something the kids never do. They ride their bikes down the street, or they ride their scooters, or they get in a car and drive, a couple blocks home. So for me, that taking students on that walk was really eye-opening and powerful. I kind of want to do that again with my students here and kind of go back to that activity and just sort of observe the school, the place where we go to school, which is something I think they might also take for granted. It's just we're in this valley full of mountains on either side, and so much to see here, just right here. So I think you could do that exercise in either way, and it still have the same kind of outcome.
And Kim, am I right in thinking that in your previous school, the English teacher actually started to notice a difference in the students' writing, and then became involved in Out of Eden Learn herself?
She wanted to partner with me on it. She wound up starting to do some of the things in her, in her classroom. I was doing this as part of my technology class, but the minute I showed her what the students were coming up with and the ideas they had and the collaboration they were doing, she kind of begged me to allow it to then go into her classroom. And so I think if you can find ways, if you're in a position like mine where you might be working with teachers, or you're an instructional coach of some kind, if you could find any way to sort of introduce it to a teacher like that and show them examples, that's what really helped me get my other school involved.
I want to segue to, so Paul himself, he's been reviewing some student work, and he wrote this comment to the student. Giraffe, there are so many keen observations in your walk. I liked your final note best. By walking, you are exposed to people in a way that motorized travel makes impossible. Moving on foot expands not only your mind, but also your social life. So I think that was kind of neat that Paul himself saw a resonance there between what he's doing out in the field and what this young person experienced. I think something that he mentioned before. Here's another example, this time from a participating school in Spain, where the young person has really stopped and admired the reflection of two trees in the water. And she says, with this activity, I have learned that many times we go around very fast and we don't stop ourselves to think and observe how pretty is the world. Being mindful of the time, this is one of my favorite quotes from the project, and I think it really encapsulates what we're about. Sometimes I feel like learning is out of a textbook, but now that I'm in this classroom, there's a lot more connections with Out of Eden to other people, and I think that's an important part about learning. As my friend was saying, how you can't just explore the world from a textbook. You have to go out and explore it yourself. I just want to hear other people's perspectives. And as I put up some of our links there, we're fairly active on social media ourselves. I just want to kind of tell you a few headlines of what's coming up. We're really excited. In the new year, we want to experiment with making Out of Eden Learn multilingual, because at the moment it is in English. We're also excited to be developing some specialized learning journeys that tailor to history classrooms or visual arts classrooms, science classrooms. And we're also interested in having young people and classroom teachers develop their own projects, find their own interests, and kind of really develop the kinds of projects that are more coming from the ground up than coming from us, and using our platform as a way to really explore themes and topics related to Paul's writing and journalism. I invite people to contact us at Out of Eden Learn if you have questions about this, and strongly encourage you to explore our website. Kim, I think we're at time because they need to transition to the next session, but I want to thank you for jumping in and sharing some of your experiences. I know teachers love to hear from other teachers, so thank you for that. And I want to thank the organizers of the conference for letting us share our work, and I hope you've all got a sense about how excited we are about this work, and we would love to have some of you out there join us.
Thank you so much, Liz and Kim.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to have you here. This has really been very exciting, and I hope everybody in the room has gone and joined the project I did, and hopefully I will get my kids involved from a home perspective, because I don't think their teachers are really kind of doing this thing. So very, very excited to learn more about this, and we'll be following all of Paul's adventures. Right now, our next keynote had a family emergency, and we took her off the schedule. So there's a break. She's recorded her session, and it will be available for people. But we actually have a break. So if people want to stick around and ask Q&A, we can do that if you're up for it, Liz.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. People want to type in questions. I'm very, very happy to answer any questions I can. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? If you can put them in the chat, and we'll banter them about. Here's one from David Wexler. Do you know about Karan Sethi and the Riverside School in India? And I know about Karan. We tried to get her to speak, and she's given a very famous TED Talk, I think. Do you know about her?
I'm not sure that I do, actually. So, and I guess it's hard for Declan to talk back to me. We do have some very progressive educators in India who are partnering up with us, and we're very, very keen to expand participation in India. So I will definitely look that up. So thank you, David, for the link. I'm going to look at that.
Yeah, he put a link in the chat. And David, if you want to talk on the mic too, I can give everybody mic privileges as well, if that would make things easier. I think everybody has mic privileges now. So if anybody wants to actually ask a question, raise your hand, and then you can take over. There is another question here from Betsy Flynn. Would it become possible to continue to follow Paul's journey throughout Out of Eden after we've completed the footsteps?
Oh, great. So, hi, Betsy. This is from one of our participating teachers. Yeah, this is something that we are really thinking seriously about. So to be clear, people who have signed up and are doing a learning journey now the fall, Part 2 is going to be available in January. We'll let people finish up this one. So for the students and teachers who are really enjoying the experience, the next learning journey, which builds on work we did last year, will really focus on young people exploring global connections at the local level and thinking about their role in history. So that's something that they could do straight after this. But we're also realizing a need amongst educators and young people to carry on following Paul. And so we're brainstorming ways that we could make some of his writing more accessible to them in real time, and to create discussion boards and ways for them to engage with what Paul's writing about in the moment. We've also heard that, you know, some schools, the students are following Paul's walk, there are daily announcements, there are notice boards, and there's this sense that for some young people, they'll be growing up as Paul completes his walk. And that's kind of a very beautiful thing, really, that as they're getting older, they're kind of following Paul's progress around the world. I believe he's in high demand for graduation ceremonies when he's finished the walk. So yes. Thank you for that question, because it's something that we're really trying to figure out, ways to help young people follow Paul along. I will say that Paul's Instagram account is very popular, we discovered, with young people, because that's a very accessible way. He posts frequent pictures from the route. And we've also found that parents are often more okay with young people being on Instagram than they are with like Facebook or Snapchat, obviously not very young children. So that's another way that they might want to informally follow along and see where he's at, as well as check into the map room to see where he's at.
And I don't know if this is that exciting, but one of the things I'm intrigued with, just because I'm an iPad user and do a lot of work with schools and iPads, are multi-touch books that can be created with iBook's author. And if there was supplementary documentation or interactive maps, or, you know, a collection of his highlights in a book that could be consumed on some sort of e-reader, I think it would be really cool. And an example of this, you know, a pretty high-end example, but is a partnership between Apple and a biologist at Harvard named E.O. Wilson, and they made 9 interactive, really highly interactive, multi-touch textbooks. You don't need to make a textbook, but it's kind of a cool example if you want to see what I'm talking about how a book will come to life. And that would be really interesting for kids to have some sort of thing like that. I'm just throwing that out there because I like that format. But anyway.
No, that's great. And I'll also say, you know, we've been a pretty small team, but just recently we've got, I'll give a shout out to Shea, who's been sitting here with me, our full-time coordinator for the project. I mean, I think there are so many possibilities, and we've been a little bit limited by our own bandwidth, but, you know, looking ahead, we're very open to partnering up with different people to really try and make the most of this amazing potential for learning that we think comes along with Paul's
Are you
walk.
funded for all 7?
So yeah, thank you for that.
Just throwing it out there, something to think about. Are you guys funded for all 7 years, or how many years are you funded for right now? I'm sure it's always a continual project, but I'm wondering how that works for you.
So actually, as you see on the slide, we give a thanks there to our funders, who are the Abundance Foundation, who are based in Oakland, California, and I believe that some from the organization are actually listening in here. So they have been incredibly generous with us and have paid for the website and for the research team here at Project Zero to undertake this work. At the moment, we're kind of deliberating about how to make this a sustainable model moving forward, because the more people we get involved in Out of Eden Learn, the more expensive it is, because we offer it completely free to participating schools. So that's something we're looking at. It is our expectation that we will be carrying on this project for the duration of the walk. But, you know, like all projects, we're continuously thinking about new funding opportunities. So if anybody wants to send us suggestions or make connections for us, we'd be very, very open to that.
Good to know. Good to know. Does anybody else have any more questions? This has been such a fabulous opportunity. And what I like about this, too, is that this is a project that people can just jump into without a lot of experience. This just makes a lot of sense. And, you know, a lot of the people who come to our conference who present here already are kind of doing things on their own, but there's so many educators out there who need a home to kind of call their own in terms of exploring the world. And so I think this is a really great starting point for many people. If you have more questions, people, please put them in the chat, and otherwise I'll let Liz go. It looks like it.
Well, I just wanted to comment on that point you've made. I mean, we really are trying to build an educator community around the walk. Like we have an educator forum. We've established a kind of connect button, which I have to say had a few teething problems, but is working well now, to really encourage teachers whose classes are grouped together to get to know one another and exchange ideas. A question that I saw come in from Rob Martin, he asks, I'm a teacher in India and will join you soon. I wonder if it's possible to spend a day walking with Paul when he makes it to India. So we do get quite a few requests, and I know that Paul is technically open to this. Right now it would be highly inappropriate because he's been walking through a really difficult phase of the walk, politically and now kind of climactically as well. But yeah, moving ahead, we're thinking about this in a way that's equitable for everybody in the group. So we definitely are thinking about ways to help kids have a real connection with Paul and to have some young people actually physically walk with him. So thanks for that question.
That's a really good question. I could just see him maybe walking with a GoPro camera and kids could follow along virtually or something. This is just amazing, and I'm so excited. I can't wait to get my own kids involved. And if there's anything we can do, Liz, to help you further promote this, please let us know. It's been an honor having you guys here, and please give our best to Paul.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.